Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Karen Hardy, and welcome to Flip This Risk podcast, where we interview high achievers and they share their stories about their relationship with risk taking. You can check out our courses related to our podcast topics at flipthisriskacademy.com and make sure that you sign up for our email list. So today I'm happy to have with us Mr. Michael J. Gelb. Michael is a professional public speaker renowned for his life changing presentations on creative leadership, genius thinking, and conscious business. He has served as an executive leadership and presentation coach to companies such as AT&T, KPMG, Merck, Microsoft, Nike, and many others. So welcome, Michael, to the show.
Great to be with you. Thanks.
Thank you. So the first, listen, you have this great book out. Let's just start with that called Mastering the Art of Public Speaking. And we'll get a little bit, dive into that a little bit more. But one of the things I did notice when I was reading the book was this big statistic, and I couldn't believe it, where you actually state that 74% of Americans suffer from glossophobia, which is the fear of public speaking. First of all, that's a huge number. And it makes me think that if you're thinking about 6 degrees of separation, more than likely, more than a handful of people I know are all have the fear of public speaking. So, what exactly is public speaking? And then why are people so afraid of it?
Well, you remember your kid in school and you stand up and start giving your book report, stumble, get lost. Everybody laughs at you. Nah, 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 nah.
Oh, yeah.
You've seen somebody be humiliated publicly. And what happens is that we become adults, we are more and more uncomfortable with that sort of possibility. So
Mm,
a lot of folks don't even want to take the risk of
yeah.
getting up in front of a group. They try to minimize that risk or avoid those opportunities. And obviously, public speaking is essential for advocacy of any kind of idea, new business, product, anything you want to get more than one other person to do, you're basically going to have to speak
Right.
to two or three or four. So it's an essential element in being successful in business. It's also something that really does convey presence and authority and power on individuals. So the person who can get up and say the right thing at the right time that helps to calm people when they're fearful or
Mm,
inspire them when they're losing hope. I mean, this is such an important
mm.
ability. And it's just, if you ever want to get invited by your friends to speak at a wedding, or you might be invited to speak at a eulogy. So there's all different kinds of public speaking. I'm a professional. That means I get paid doing it. But what I love to do is help people who aren't necessarily going to do this for money to do it as though they were doing it for money.
I love that, Michael. I love that idea you just shared there because I was just thinking about people I know who have really tuned out because they had or got flustered because they had to speak in front of people. I used to have a coworker who used to hold this paper clip in his hand and rub it while he was actually speaking. I guess there was a calming factor. But when we talk about public speaking, a lot of people immediately think about people like you who do this big stage speaking in front of large groups of people, when actually what you're saying is that there are scales of public speaking. Even when it comes to saying good morning to a stranger, aren't we doing public speaking?
We are. And what's curious is, like, if you, let's say you meet people, a stranger, somebody casually, how do you connect with them? How good a listener are you? Do you ask them good questions to get them engaged? Would other people say that you're a good listener? And then when it's time for you to make your point, are you good at telling stories? Do you keep them engaged? Do you give relevant examples so that people feel that you're really a good communicator. So I wrote a previous book called The Art of Connection,
Mm-hmm.
7 relationship building skills every leader needs now. And what that book does is to go into, actually I have it right here. So this book, The Art of Connection, it goes into the real skills we need to connect with people one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
Mastering the art of public speaking is the skills we need to connect with people one on anywhere from 2 to 200,000 or beyond.
Yeah.
So this is really 2 volumes of the same book. Part 1 is, master the skills one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
Part 2 is expand those so that you can apply the same principles to have more influence and persuasiveness with larger and larger groups of people.
That's fantastic. So when you mentioned, step back a second, you mentioned when I said that, 74% of people fear glossophobia, and you went back to recall, hey, we've all been in front of the classroom and got, ridiculed in some form or manner. Did that happen to you, Michael? I mean, how did you become this professional speaker?
Uh,
Is it because you had one of those experiences?
I had plenty of those experiences.
Okay. Okay.
I had plenty of those experiences. What's funny though is my family is Jewish and Italian. So we got 2 very highly verbal traditions. And I had 2 younger brothers. And every night at our dinner table was an all-out debate. And just to get anybody to listen to you, you had to be very forceful. So all I can tell you is I went to Passaic Senior High School in New Jersey.
Hmm.
You know how in high school they give out these awards like
Oh yeah,
most likely to succeed,
most creative, all that stuff, man.
most artistic, or best looking. Well, I won class arguer. Check
That
this.
was that was actually a category.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 years later, my younger brother won it at the same high school. So that gives you an idea of our
Mhm.
background. Now, I was really blessed. I met one of the great, famous, high-paid public speakers in the world way back in
Mhm.
1975. And he had just written a book and he'd done this very successful television program. This was in England, it was for the BBC. And we made a great connection. And he was doing a 5-day senior management leadership retreat in Switzerland. And he liked the research and the work that I was doing. So he invited me to come and be a special guest on this and to share some of my work.
Mhm.
And so I got up in front of the group and I just told stories about what I was learning and how it might be helpful for them. And they seemed to really like it. So the HR director of this global company said to this fellow who was the star of this course, he said, "We want this American guy on all our courses around the world." So all of a sudden, I'm traveling around the world, and I'm not making this up. They would fly me first class all over the world. They would send a car for me,
Wow.
put me up in a 5-star hotel. I walk into this room, I get introduced. People listen to everything I say. They ask me really thoughtful questions. They give me huge applause, sometimes a standing ovation. And then they started giving me money. Yeah, that's how I became a public speaker. I
Well, that was,
this was like the best thing that ever happened.
hey, easy decision by far. But for those of us who are indeed terrified, because I know folks who've been in the C-suite who are not good public speakers. They're great with, in technical skills. And I think today we have a lot of people with a lot of great skill set technically, but with the way we're going in terms of this new normal and the way the world is going to be, how much of a role is the importance of public speaking going to play?
It's a great question. And I'm so glad you mentioned that about the artist, because I have to say, for most of my career, the part of my work that focuses on helping people develop their public speaking skills,
Mhm.
I'd say that the vast majority of people who have engaged me or been sent to me by their senior leadership are people who fit exactly the criteria that you just suggested. In other
Hmm.
words, they're technically excellent, but they often are introverted and are
Yes.
among that 74% with severe glossophobia.
Hmm.
Not only that, they think not only do they not want to learn it, they think they can't learn it. So I'll tell you a story. I had, it's in the book, but I had a client in the financial services business. They were in-house pension fund running billions and billions of dollars for, well, I can say who it is. It was DuPont.
Okay.
And, but they wanted, this group wanted to become an independent business unit. They wanted to become their own separate business with DuPont as their main client, and then they could service other clients. And obviously, this would be much more lucrative for them, but they also believed it would be cheaper for DuPont to not have to pay all their benefits and just use them as a service provider.
Hmm.
Be a win-win. They'd make more money. They'd be able to take on other clients, and they'd be better able to service DuPont as an independent business. So in order to get that, in order to make that happen, I was strategizing with them because I was the executive coach to the head of this group, and I've been doing. He engaged me to do all kinds of training.
Right.
People. He was a very visionary guy. So the key point, however, is we had to get his team to get up in front of the pension and benefits committee of DuPont and explain how they were going to do this and how they were going to meet the needs that the pension and benefits committee had. And that focused on one really fundamental issue, which was value. It
Hmm.
had two meanings. One, their strategy of investment was value investing
Hmm.
rather than growth investing. Two, we knew that if we could demonstrate that we really can be a better value than the various firms who are investing the money. This is for the savings plan, the voluntary savings plan that was mostly at that time, I think, being run by Merrill Lynch and other outside brokers.
Right.
So our group wanted to get control of it. And we had to make, they said, okay, they loved the top guy, but they said, we need to meet the people who will be running this money. Well, these were classic introverts, glossophobics from
Yeah.
central casting. And
Hmm.
literally, they would never have come to me if their boss didn't order them
Oh,
to
yeah.
come to me, which he did. And they didn't want to work with me.
Yeah.
So this is why I'm a professional, because bring them on.
Yeah.
So it was helpful to me that they had no choice.
Right, it is. But I'm sure they were terrified, and a lot of people,
They were
I've seen this where they just can't function knowing that they have to speak in front of people. But I think what people need to do, and what you're saying, is that they need to practice this skill. You don't have to just go for the full crowd, the one to many, but you could do just in presentations on your job or trying to share information to your, to leadership within an organization. If you just pin down some of the key things that you talk about, because what I'm noticing is that as we get more into the age of data and data analytics, people are just relying on pictures to tell the story, when in actuality part of public speaking is having the ability to tell the story. Isn't that part of the skill set?
very much so. So
Yeah.
my strategy with this team was to help them discover a story
Yeah, there you go.
they could tell naturally. And this, by
Hmm.
the way, was to the chairman of DuPont, the CFO, the head of the pension and benefits committee in the boardroom. So you know what these
Yeah,
boardroom tables are like in these big companies. It's like
absolutely, absolutely.
Dr. Evil's table in Austin Powers.
Yeah, the long table.
They press the button and you're out. We had them tell the story and get used to telling it, and then they practiced telling it to each other. They critiqued it. I helped them work on their body language, their voice tonality, making contact with the audience, eliminating any unnecessary sounds, deleting any cliches. And what happened is you watch these people transform from terrified to enthusiastic. By the time we got to doing this, it was so natural to them. Each person went up, told a story. Some of the stories are actually in the book.
Hmm.
And you, it was it seemed like a magical transformation, except it's not magical. It's a skill.
It's a
I'm
skill.
your coach. I will train you. Maybe you're not good at tennis. Maybe you think you have bad hand-eye coordination. I used to coach tennis. We work with you. We teach you how to do it. In a few months, you're hitting forehands and backhands. You're improving your serve. You have a pretty good game. We can coach you in piano. You start out, you have no musical sense. There's ways of practicing. All of a sudden, you're
Yeah.
playing the little sonatas. Oh my God, this is the delight and the of having 100 billion brain cells. They just didn't come with a manual, so that's why I write all these books.
Absolutely. But let me ask you this question, in terms of people understanding the skill set of public speaking and getting them to that place. You talked about the risk of not public speaking. What are some of the things that people miss out of because they avoid what they think is a risk in
Yeah,
terms of doing that?
the biggest thing they miss out on is getting promoted if they're in
Mm,
an organization. Because if you take two people with the same degree of technical expertise, and we need one of them to become the executive vice president of the whole group, the factor that may indeed make the difference is that one of them is better at standing up and speaking to the whole group, and the other one can't. Because look, here's the thing. As you move up and up in an organization, you can delegate what is written in your name. My
right.
clients, I coach a lot of CEOs. I help them write their messages.
Hmm.
They send stuff to me. I turn it around very quickly, and they say, "Oh my God, that sounds so much better. Thank you so much." So that's great, and then they can put it on their website or send out a bulletin to the whole company. But when they have to stand up in front of the company, whether it's in person or on Zoom or any other modality, they have to stand there, look at the people, look in
Yeah.
the camera, and give the presentation. You can't delegate that to your speech. Your speech writer can't be your speech giver.
Oh,
You got to
absolutely.
stand up and do it. So the more important you become,
Hmm.
the more important public speaking is. And if you want to become more important, you need to master the art of public speaking.
It's funny because a lot of people that think that they don't need more of that, they need more technical skills. And actually, you top out of the technical skills, and then you come into this new area where it's not about the technical skills at all. You can't make a better graphic, you can't make a better presentation. The next thing is that you have to engage and connect in terms of communicating, which is a power skill, I think, especially now.
It's a huge, and we want it to be a positive power skill.
Hmm. Yes, we do. We do want to be a part. Everything here is positive. Absolutely. So, listen, what about in terms of some tips that you can give people in terms of improving their public speaking skills? Now that we know that it's a risk if you don't do this,
Yes.
given the new normal and the new business environment that we're about to enter, it's not enough to have the technical expertise because you could be the CEO, but when you're doing those broad, presentations to your investors, you have to speak to the people. You can't have someone write write the messages for you. So where can someone start, and what are some tips that you can give people?
Sure. Well, the first thing to say is that everything I will share is even more important in a virtual modality.
Mm,
So
absolutely.
the only difference is the virtual modality is it makes everything that I put in here even more important.
Hmm.
The good news is uh, uh, I had a chance to make final edits while we were aware of the pandemic and so on, and I didn't have to change much. I basically just said everything we're talking about here is even more important. So I'll tell you the first thing. And what's wonderful, I love working with people on their body language, on their facial expressions, on their eye contact. I love working with people on how do you center yourself and deal with the stress and transform it. And I teach all sorts of methodologies drawn from the professional theater and also from martial arts, which I've studied and taught for many, many years.
Hmm.
But forget all that for a minute. Let's make it really, really simple. the first thing that starts to transform your fear and help you get on the journey towards mastering the art is to realize this simple truth. Your public speech or presentation is not about you, it's about the audience.
Excellent. Hmm.
So,
Excellent point. Yeah.
so what happens, see, when people are frightened, and we know 74% of people have glossophobia, they formulate their objectives for every presentation they give unconsciously, and it goes something like this. My objective is to get through this without embarrassment.
Yeah.
Right? So now we know that doesn't bring out the best. It's being too risk averse and locking down your creativity, your expressiveness, your commitment. You know, it's funny. So you mentioned that you're based in DC, and I moved there in 1982, and the Redskins won the Super Bowl. Now they're called the Washington Football Team.
Right.
But then the next year they were in the Super Bowl again, and even though they lost, it was great. They were under Joe Gibbs. They were a phenomenal team, and they'd be down in the fourth quarter, and they would march down the field, and they would always come back to win.
Right.
But then after Joe Gibbs left, something changed in the culture of the team, and they'd get a fourth quarter lead, and they'd start playing not to lose.
Yeah.
You'd watch the other team's quarterback pick them apart, and they kept losing. And other than a few glory years when Doug Williams came back and led them all the way, he was amazing.
Hey, Mark Rippon.
Right?
Let's not forget Mark Rippon.
That's just one story that I remember it struck me. What changed? Oh, the culture of the team. They're playing not to lose. If you play your presentation not to lose, you're going to get picked apart by the audience.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you play to win? You focus on helping the audience instead of worrying about yourself. That moves your energy outward instead of inward, where the butterflies are all churning around your stomach.
Yeah.
And it gets the butterflies to fly in formation. So what do you do then? What you do, and I have all my clients do this, you write down, what specifically do I want my audience to know as a result of my presentation? How do I want them to feel? And what do I want them to do?
Yeah.
For what you want them to know, keep it simple, speaker. So don't try to cover 57 abstruse points.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the purpose of public speaking. Public speaking is to get across one. If you can get across one idea that people remember, that's
successful. Yeah.
Makes it worth. If you can get across three, hallelujah. How do you want them to feel? Hugely important, because a lot of these technical people you're talking about think that emotion isn't part of business, and they try to be just all analytical and technical. But human beings always buy on emotion, and they justify with fact.
Right.
So if you want them to be really open to all the brilliant facts you're going to present them, you've got to connect with them. So you want them to feel comfortable, enthusiastic, engaged, excited about the prospect of what it is you're going to share with them. And then think through, what do you want them to do as a result of this presentation? Do you want them to stop doing something? Do you want them to buy something? Do you want them to spend money to get you something? Understand. And if you don't know why you're doing a presentation, don't do it.
Excellent. That's the best advice. So people really need to think through and think about the why. Why are you doing this? How are you going to connect with them? What do they need to know? How do you connect with them? How do you make them feel? And what do you want them to do afterwards? I think those are three great tips that anyone can remember. It's easy to remember, and something they really need to look at and think about prior to actually, committing to speaking someone. So before we wrap up, when I went through your book, there's a section that talks about the 10 most annoying expressions you should stay away from if you want to be an impact speaker. So I selected three of them. I want you to just expand on them a little bit more. Okay, well, I think this is so great. First of all, one of the annoying expressions you identify is at the end of the day. Now, why did you include that one in there as an annoying expression you definitely want to stay away from when you're speaking?
So mindless gibberish should always be deleted from our speech if we want to have genuine authority. So the phrase at the end of the day should only be used to refer to the period just before sunset.
Makes sense to me.
What people are really trying to say, if you must say a word, say ultimately.
Mm, that's a good transition word. Yeah.
If you need a transition word. But if you I listen to a lot of sports, and at the end of the day, all things being equal, everybody's got to give 100% because you got to do what you got to do. Do you know what I'm saying? You didn't say anything. So where's your
Right.
authority? The other thing
Mm,
about this, by the way, is it's not a sin to say a cliche. We all do it. I
right.
find
Right.
myself, they slip out. But you want to be aware of what you're saying. And if you can think and say something fresh, you then have an advantage. You then are growing as an intelligence. So do we want to get smarter and sharper as we get older? Or do we
Absolutely.
just want to hypnotize ourselves into this mind numbing blah, blah, blah that goes on much of the time and passes for communication and is just
Not
nothing?
communication. It's great. That's really great because in high school, I didn't take 12th grade English. I actually was accepted in this creative school for 1 year where we wrote poetry. We were taught how to write poetry in the rhythm of words. And one of the requirements was that whenever we did our recitals, we had to remember everything. We had to memorize everything. You couldn't carry paper. And that really helped me throughout my life in terms of being able, you either know what you want to say or you don't know what you want to say. Right?
And if you don't, pause, take a
Yeah.
breath,
Take a breath.
think about it.
Think
What
about
a
it.
concept. Think about what you're going to say. And don't say anything that doesn't improve on the silence.
Yeah, well, the silence is very uncomfortable for people. Right? Okay, so the second one is one of the most annoying expressions we should avoid is the word hack. Hack. I hear that a lot. Everything's a hackathon. Why do you want to eliminate that word, Michael? It's
Well,
very popular.
yes. I, not necessarily eliminate, but use judiciously, and if possible, find a better word choice. Because, first of all, hacking refers to illegally breaking into someone else's computer to steal their information. So, is that the word ambiance you would like to create and the association that you would like to create with your character and
Yeah.
who you are? It's also hackneyed. In other words, it's overused. So what a lot
Hmm.
of these phrases, they started out, they were quite clever. When the first person to say, let's biohack, that was clever as a way to be helpful. After there's a quote in the book, actually, this French poet said, the first man to compare a woman to a rose was a poet. Those afterwards were imbeciles.
Okay. Well, if you're number two, it doesn't matter then, right? You didn't come up with it.
Come up with, be number
Yeah.
one, come up with your own
Yeah.
word choice word.
Okay. And the final one is very popular, but it may be overused as well. Superpower.
Oh, please.
We all have superpowers.
When people first started using this, okay, cute. But now every normal human ability is being referred to as a superpower. Well, it isn't. And guess what? There are no superheroes. Comic books are fantasies, and so is your life if you think you're going to develop superpowers. Why not just develop real powers like public speaking? And the way to do that is to stop using these phrases
Things that,
other people blather out and then others just adopt
yeah.
without reflecting.
This is awesome because what you're referring to is the idea of being original. It's okay to be authentic and original. You don't have to borrow other terms or do what other people are doing. Just speak from your center for the most part. Speak from your center and connect with people. Stop thinking about you. It's about them. What do you want them to take away, right? From the experience of being in your presence. I mean, it's really a gift to be able to speak and to stand in front of people. Either you're doing a presentation or trying to sell another idea. I think people appreciate brevity, getting to the point, and then come up with some new ideas, a new way of thinking. I mean, it's everybody's time. Time is valuable. So we want to spend everyone's time wisely. So, Michael, just to close out, did you have any final thoughts that you want to leave with the audience?
Yes, the other one I'd like people to leave out and delete is please stop saying thank you for your time. Because the time would have passed whether we were together or not.
What do you suggest we put on the end of that? What do we replace it with?
For example, if I, instead of saying to you at the end of this, well, thank you for your time, which, you know, just notice how it leaves you a little flat. I didn't really say anything. It's again, it's mindless. But if I say, Karen, thank you for so thoughtfully reflecting back what I said when you asked me those beautiful questions. Which would you prefer? Thank you for your time or what I just said?
You know, it doesn't add anything. We need to think in terms of, does this add anything at all? Well, that is awesome. Michael, thank you for your time.
I knew you couldn't resist once
I couldn't resist. But no, this is great. It's very helpful, especially for my audience who are risk professionals and deal with a lot of technical information, but also those who are not in that field. I think it's something everyone can find value in, and there's plenty of room to grow. And we definitely shouldn't be afraid to take the risk of public speaking. We can only grow and do better from it.
Well, for those risk professionals, make sure to direct them to read the chapter in the book on molecule fondling.
I sure will. And in that note, I want to thank you, Michael, again, and thank you everyone for tuning in to Flip This Risk. I'm Dr. Karen Hardy, and I'll catch you next time.